Hello and welcome to Coffee and Comics. I'm Todd A. And once again, Taylor is not with me. He is in Italy on his honeymoon. So I'm joined by a very special guest, Lainey of Comics Unlimited, which is the store I've been going to for years. Hello.
Hi.
So this is possibly an awkward version of Coffee and Comics because we're actually doing this at a coffee shop out in public. Not live though, but we've never done that before. So you are a real guinea pig.
It's exciting.
I know. This is, I asked you if you wanted to do this show and asked you if you were a coffee drinker, and you said you are not. But what are you drinking today?
It's a lavender latte made with, I don't know, did you choose
It's
almond
soy.
or soy?
It's,
with
yeah.
soy milk. And it's still a mystery if it's actually tea or coffee.
Yeah, no determination on that. I'm drinking my usual iced vanilla latte, but it is really delicious. We're at Coffee Tale in Huntington Beach. This one's a richer coffee. And now that you've listened to a couple of episodes, you know I don't know anything about coffee. So just
neither.
Good or bad is all I can rate them with. Anyway, I asked Lainey to do this particular episode because you run a monthly comic book and graphic novel book club at Comics Unlimited called Comics Bang.
Yes,
You
Bang.
just told me that and I almost forgot it. So last month you read Punk Rock Jesus by Sean Murphy, and I was unable to attend the meeting. I've never attended one. I'm very sorry. But I thought it'd be cool to get together and talk about this book because I did read it. I did pick it up intending to go to the club. So that's what we're talking about today. It's called Punk Rock Jesus. It is by Sean Murphy, who also did Batman White Knight, which Taylor and I talked about a few episodes ago. What made you pick this for Comics Bang? I keep wanting to say Comedy Bang because of that podcast, Comedy Bang Bang.
Yeah, it's Comics Bang. It's supposed to be Comics, Books, and Novels Group. We had a really hard time picking the name, and then people thought it was a dating service for a moment, but it wasn't.
I like
we
the
chose
acronym.
it. I think we had already read a few books that Sean Murphy illustrated. We read Chrononauts. What else? We read something else. Now I can't remember. We read a lot of Mark Millar too. So
Wow.
but we definitely have some fans, and some of the other members in the book club had brought it up, and we were trying to sell it without trying to pitch it. But it got enough people interested that when we took the vote at the end of the night, they were like, "Well, let's read Punk Rock Jesus."
Okay.
Oh, we had just finished reading Tokyo Ghost. That was the other one.
Wait, did Sean Murphy have something to do with that?
Yeah.
What?
He illustrated it.
Oh my God, I've got to catch up so hard on that. For some reason, I thought Tokyo Ghost was the same illustrator of Black Science because it's a Rick Remender book.
Yeah, it's got Hollingsworth on it, Remender, and Murphy.
Oh my God. Okay, so that and Chrononauts. I'll just check off this question. I was going to ask you, what other Sean Murphy books should I read?
All of them.
Yeah.
Joe the Barbarian.
Really? Okay.
He did a run on American Vampire. He did Hellblazer, City of Demons, getting older stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, I did some stuff for Dark Horse.
What of those, where does Punk Rock Jesus fall in the chronology of that?
Oh, that's a good question. It came out in 2012. So that was before The Wake with Snyder. And I think that was before Chrononauts too. But it was, I don't think it was his first endeavor in doing solo stuff, but it was kind of like the first big one that he did with DC, because he had just become like Vertigo's golden child coming off of Joe the Barbarian.
Okay.
And then, later he was doing stuff for like Batman and all kinds of stuff.
Okay, that makes sense. I mean, there's an afterword that we'll talk about later in the book, and it's clear that he was working on this maybe before he was even a professional in the comics industry. So as I read it, I wasn't sure if this was like his debut kind of as both a writer and artist or what.
Not quite. He had already done some other stuff, but it was kind of like, I don't know. Yeah, I wouldn't say debut as a writer, but I would say it was probably his first big solo thing.
It was, it's definitely, it looks like a Vertigo book, of course, on the outside, but on the inside it is on newsprint paper, and it is very deliberately printed to look like a punk rock scene. Maximum Rock and Roll is the one that jumped to my mind. I didn't know if you had anything else to add there, if you knew about the origins of it, but it is
I love that it's in black and white. I know some people are really put off without color. And I'm like, you need to appreciate this line work. You're insane. The inks on this are amazing.
Yeah.
And I remember actually at the time when it was coming out and when Joe the Barbarian had ended, Joe Weems, who's, amazing at inking, would come into the shop and complain to me about how good Sean Murphy was. So I'm going to throw him under the bus. Or if he'll ever hear it. But
wow. Yeah, it's really heavy on the blacks, but like you said, the line work just has to be appreciated. It's the characters, I don't know. I got a real personality from each of them, not just on the art, but even on his writing and the characterization of them, which I thought was really impressive. And of course I read it thinking like, this is the first thing he's ever written and illustrated. So I was really wrong on that. But I thought maybe the best way to get into the book and what it's about, because for me, it couldn't be summed up. But like that back cover thing did not sum it up very well for me.
When I sell it to people, I feel like I'm dating myself because I always like, oh, it's like the Truman Show, that Jim Carrey movie, but about a Jesus clone.
That is really succinct. So I was seeing it as like there's story layers we're going to have to talk about, and where do you even start peeling that onion apart? But there is a giant corporation called J2, run by, is his name Slate? I think is the guy's.
I think it's Rick Slate.
And so he's just sort of the evil corporate tyrant, and their whole plan is to clone Jesus Christ from DNA that they find on the Shroud of Turin.
And TV.
And televise the whole thing. So that's kind of that layer. And then every character has like a different motivation under that. He hires this doctor to run the cloning named Dr. Epstein. And she is taking the job only so that she can, because Slate will fund her research on an algae that eats CO2 and will purify the atmosphere.
Saving the earth.
Right. And then but then Slate has to cast a woman to give birth to this Jesus clone. So that's Gwen.
Very naive, yeah.
Yeah, so it's just kind of like there's like that reality show layer. She, of course, knows what she's signing up for, that everything will be televised. There's no surprise there. And then there's this other character that, strangely enough, the book starts with, named Thomas McHale, who, he has a really rich backstory that...
I love Thomas so much. The book club argued whether it was Chris, who's the Jesus clone, or Thomas, that was the hero of the book, if he was the main character.
Wow.
And I think it kind of changes. I think that's what we settled on. Like the first half is Thomas, and then the second half is maybe Chris. But our punk, our IRA, Irish devout Catholic punk, I guess.
Yeah.
Thomas.
So it opens with it's sort of Thomas's origin story, which is that his parents are there's a raid on their house. They're Irish, and we're made to believe that it's like not the IRA that has raided him, but the dirty Ulster Protestants that have shot and killed them. And Thomas is rescued by his uncle, and sort of the uncle swears he's going to turn him into the kind of man that his father wanted him to be, and that's how it opens. That to me was like, when I picked it up in the shop and sort of flipped through those first few pages, I did not know where the story was going to go after that. Like, I was sure that, anyway, he is hired by J2 to be their security consultant and like run their whole security. So, that IRA background comes in and like flashbacks, I guess. And then he just straight up tells the story to someone else. I can't remember the other guy's name that's like his technical...
Tim.
Yes,
I love Tim.
Yeah.
He's a stand-up guy. I wish he had more in the book.
Yeah. And then I guess, well, I don't know how we want to talk about like getting into the story, but at times it moves really quickly. Like whole years will pass and we will just see the Jesus clone grown up. So when Jesus 2, J2 is born, Gwen names him Chris, but I guess his proper name is Jesus Christ. And then it'll sort of flash forward and like Chris is 5 years old.
Yeah, he's going through being toddler and slowly up until he's 14 and rebellious.
Right. And we learn he's basically being educated by holograms and raised on this island so that they're in international waters and, free from oversight. In the background, though, there is a group called the New American Christians that are gaining in,
I love how they change because initially they're very against it. It's blasphemous that they're making a clone and he's a false idol, and then spoiler, they switch teams later.
It's they object to the whole reality show bit of it, and the blasphemy of thinking someone could clone Jesus, and then. I don't know. I feel like I'm just kind of dancing around the obvious, which is about halfway through the book. Chris turns 14, and Gwen has tried to escape the island several times. And there's this. What is the thing? There's like a big public unveil. Oh, they're going to get Chris to host some award show, and that's kind of when he unveils himself as this.
His
punk kid.
Gwen dies. She leaves, and then. She has an experience after she cleans up because I guess being the mother of Christ is very difficult. So
and living on an island only talking to reality show cast and crew.
Right. So they have this giant operation to retrieve Chris from the island, in which she dies in front of him, and it changes everything. He's very upset. Thomas is upset, and suddenly new ideas are sinking in. And I guess that's how he wants to liberate everyone. I don't know if that's... He kind of leads this new idea of thinking that, it's a sham.
Right. I guess so. There's another castmate that we should introduce. That's Rebecca. Dr. Epstein delivers a baby and is pregnant shortly after Chris is born, about a year after, I guess. So he's kind of always grown up with this other girl, but she has seen the outside, and she is not as cloistered as he is. There's that other, I forgot about the other weird detail, which is all the holographic educational tools are based to show Chris a creationist.
Yeah. Very, very Christian mentality, very strict.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're dinosaurs or not.
No, and this kid grows up thinking he's asking his mom, can I do that? Can I walk on water? Can I...
Yeah.
Or there's one part where he's I did that, right?
Right. He's did I do that? When do I get to do this again?
Yeah. That part is super creepy.
Yes.
So when he does see his mother die in front of him, Gwen's obviously battled alcoholism and all this, and as you said, she finally escapes and cleans up, comes back, is killed in this awful accident that looks like it's engineered by Slate, and... How do they... Chris then kind of turns they remove the filter so that he can...
So Slate had turned off all the cameras, so there's no evidence, so no one gets to see the truth. And then because Chris is right there and he's demanding to perform a miracle on his mom, it doesn't get to happen. And I think that's when things clicked for him.
Yeah. So then he re-educates himself with
through
this
punk.
Yeah.
Through punk rock music.
Well, and the
science.
And the database kind of there's some cool little what do we want to, they're not even Easter eggs, it's just background details of what records he's actually listening to, and I noticed there was on the bookshelf there was the God Delusion and a couple of other really
the
famous
Easter eggs that are in there, big punk records. And then, name dropping some big scientists. I love the shout out to Carl Sagan. That was really good.
Oh, yeah. Hail Sagan. So then Jesus Christ becomes an atheist.
Right.
And
joins a punk band.
and is fine. He doesn't even escape from the island, though. It's they take him off to be the host of some award show.
Right, they wanted to reintroduce him that hey, everything's safe or good and fine, and secretly right before the show he gets a mohawk and makes a mockery of Slate.
Right, so then that second half of the book is him as this punk rocker who's... a
very cranky teenager.
he's very cranky, and it's... I don't know, we get hints of the world that they live in, New York is flooded. It's not quite
Right. We start to see like how, so the book too, like it was written in 2012, but it takes place next year in 2019. So it wasn't even like that far away.
Right.
And I was thinking about the progress of reality shows from when the Truman Show actually came out. Like I think American reality TV was still kind of a novelty, and now it's so commonplace. Like it's not even reality TV, it's just TV.
I mean, we're living in one.
Right, and so, yeah, once we pull away from J2 and we start seeing them travel the world and we understand, like, the downfall of our society on a global scale, ecologically and maybe socially, too, it's kind of alarming. I don't want this to happen next year.
No kidding. I think that was what, that's where Thomas's backstory was always really interesting to me, but that's where it really, because Chris becomes really strident in his atheism and his views on revolution, and that's where Thomas becomes like the moderating force for it. Like he's the sort of reasonable voice that's like, I grew up with these.
It breaks my heart too, because I think, the religious fight that the IRA has, it's almost like just an updated version of the Crusades. Him losing his faith breaks my heart, or questioning his faith breaks my heart. Poor Thomas.
Yeah
and it's kind of alarming. It's like, he's still looking for that guidance because he has the faith, but even though Chris doesn't, and how do you follow that leader then?
Do you think there's a moment where, I mean, I know there's sort of an explicit moment, but when Thomas starts questioning, or because he really believes that this is the clone of Jesus. Right.
I
mean, I can't think of, I don't even think the death of Gwen, like, shakes his faith at that moment. I don't think Thomas has that.
No, I don't. I think in that moment, he already has so many murders. He tattoos crosses on his back because those are his burden to bear. But he, I think in that he's already resolved that like Slate needs to go. He needs to murder him, and he would be justified in doing so for the sake of the Savior. And I think later on, as Chris denounces that position, I think that's when he really starts to dissolve.
Yeah, there's a big, there's definitely that moment for him where he has sworn that he would never kill again, and then, do you remember the scene where he just loses it, and like, instead of just killing one person, like Thomas goes crazy. I don't know if that's that's the moment where he's appealing to Chris, like, you're going to save me, right? Like, you're going to redeem me for this because I'm protecting you. Yeah.
Such sins. Murder, that's a big one.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I've another thing I've kind of danced around. I mean, we've gotten into it a little bit, but that the atheism of the book is like on full display. Like, it's like that's what Sean talks about in his afterword, is that he lost his faith.
Right. And I had during the book club when this came up into discussion, when I had initially read it, I understood that he was still a devout Catholic, but that had spent time questioning or, looking and appreciating its science, which I know a lot of Christians that way, which is good. I don't think anything negative about having faith in a similar way. But yeah, I guess he did become an atheist, and he thinks he's a better person for that. So that's.
Did you ever think it was like kind of, was it like too much? Was the book itself too strident in this, like, the way it presented the atheism of Chris?
I don't think so. I feel like if you were 14 and your world just got flipped upside down, it would be that aggressive. And I think like, I love Thomas, and like I said, my heart breaks for him, because I think that is his story about the faith is more realistic of when maybe someone starts to get shaky about it.
Yeah, I think, that's one of the things that I thought was so interesting about the book, was that there was just, Sean Murphy did a really good job of characterizing, Chris is like a 14-year-old. When they lose their faith, it's like black and white to them,
Right.
One minute he believes he's Jesus Christ, and then the next he's convinced God doesn't exist. Whereas Thomas is the more adult version of that, and like more reasonable and tempered. It's just crazy to think that with his background growing up around the IRA, that he would be the moderate, you know.
That scene where his uncle talks to Thomas about being like his father, or raising him to be whatever he was going to be, like a soldier or not. Little baby Thomas says that he wants to be like his dad, and I think I may have been the only one that didn't look at it like, yeah, I want to be a soldier for the Church of God, or that he wanted to be dead. Like, he may have been just so morbidly depressed at the loss of his parents.
Whoa.
It's heavy.
Yeah, that is heavy.
I love little baby Thomas' face. Is so cute.
Yeah, there's great little like panel sequence of like baby Thomas not saying anything, baby Thomas saying that, and then current day Thomas, you know, to...
But we'll never know.
We'll never know. That is such a great question, because then it's... I don't know if we should talk about that reveal, maybe. But there's some, like, we learned some other stuff about Thomas's background. Right. And he learns stuff about his father, that his father might not have actually wanted him to follow that path.
Yeah.
For sure. So, the uncle has basically raised Thomas with this... a lie. I mean, for sure. Actually, many lies, because that...
There's a lot of lies. Lies are a thing in this book. I think, too, like, when Chris awakens, it's the realization that, you know, Slate is doing this for money. And later we find out the shroud may not be what the clone was made from, and all kinds of other things.
Right.
I think, just... I'm not Jesus. There's a lot of lies in this book.
And again, I read it through this, like, you know, my own funny perspective of thinking this was Sean's first, like, creator-owned, like, fully written and illustrated book. So, to me, there were some of those, like, it was sometimes hard to see or to reconcile or justify, like, is he leaving out something here because he doesn't have enough space, or is it because... this is his first time doing this and putting it together. But now in retrospect, I think it was all very deliberate.
I think there was a lot that was deliberate, and I think I had read an interview, and he said that Karen Berger, who was still the editor at Vertigo, because they didn't want it initially. And so later, after Joe the Barbarian came out, they're like, okay, we'll take a second look at it. And she kind of helped him polish up parts of it.
Okay.
So I don't know what excess was cut away, but...
Oh, interesting. And also, I mean, he mentions in that afterward, he actually started writing this when he was still a believer.
Right.
And so then he went back and, you know, rethought it. And to me, that seems so radical, too, to take this script that you've written and go back. I don't know, just the concept of what if the clone of Jesus Christ were an atheist is, like, super radical. Like, what a crazy idea.
I think it's a nice one, though.
Yeah.
You know, I would want someone to not think that they're better than anybody else.
Wow. Were there other topics or issues that you brought up in the book club that really jumped out to you?
I have to think about it. Because that meeting was actually really small. Lots of people couldn't make it, and so I'm glad that we're doing this,
cool.
So that everyone that missed it can listen in. Gwen and the angel, the guardian angel that saves her.
Oh, right.
Which I think is also super symbolic. Because as we read comics, you know, whether it's superhero books or fantasy books, you know, what's presented as fact, because that's how it's shown to us, so we have to take that as the truth in the story. And so we see Gwen after she's in recovery, and she wants to commit suicide, and she jumps out the window, and then she's saved by this angel, and she has bruises on her shoulders.
Right.
But in the very next page, she's like pushing this book that's supposed to exploit J2, and the news anchor calls her out and is like, there's no evidence, everything's locked, all the doctors said, like, you're full of baloney. And I think that's, you know, even then as a reader, you're like, I can't trust this.
Yeah.
And then you question what's truth in the book more so.
Yeah.
Or you could, maybe people just skipped over.
And we get some details from Dr. Epstein at the very end of the book that make us questions about, like, her daughter's origin story. I mean, she just basically attributes it to sort of a miraculous thing, and we're left hanging on that too. Like, yeah, how did this happen?
We did have some people in book club. I don't know if I want to spoil it too much for people that didn't read it, but felt that Rebecca may have been the savior instead of Chris.
I don't know my biblical history that well, but I did Google, the character of Rebecca in the Bible because I was thinking like, well, is who I especially because of the spelling of it, like they spelled it in that biblical Hebraic way, I guess, and I Googled it just to see, like, is there some clue I'm missing here? But she's the wife of Isaac and the mother of Esau and Jacob, so that kind of killed my theory. I originally thought it was, I confused her with the wife of Abraham, who's kind of the father of the religion of, like all the Judeo-Christian, I don't know, Abraham's the father of three faiths kind of thing. So
only Sean Murphy knows.
Right, I know.
Like,
so he kind of like ruined my little theory there. But
he just had a crush on a girl named Rebecca or something.
Maybe,
I'm just
yeah.
kidding.
I mean, I think everything else was so deliberate that he absolutely chose that biblical name for a reason. Yeah, a car just drove up on the sidewalk.
I also spilled coffee on my pants. It's good.
Or tea.
Or tea.
It's there had to be some reason she was named Rebecca.
It's a good Christian name.
But yeah, it was. That's a good question. I like the question that came out of book club. Like, was she the real savior?
You have to read the book to find out.
I know. And draw your own conclusions, I think.
Yeah.
I think it's on the back of this that or in one of the quotes, someone describes it as a sci-fi book. And I didn't read it that way at all. Like, I read this as like a contemporary take on religion and reality TV. I guess
I'm trying to think of like how it could be sci-fi. I mean, it does have a lot of science in it, and
yeah, if it was like slightly in the future, does that count
very
as sci-fi?
Near future.
Yeah, the best kind of sci-fi, a meditation on liberty for the cyber age, was what Pop Matters called it. Which I wouldn't have, like, the liberty part of it I wouldn't have put in there either, but I assume that's the danger of the pull quote.
All I can think of is all those, like, when you go to Hobby Lobby and the signs that say, y'all need Jesus, and how the other side came out with Neil deGrasse Tyson shirts that say, y'all need science. I think that's what just came to mind.
Well, I didn't even know Hobby Lobby had that.
Well, like, Hobby Lobby doesn't have Neil deGrasse Tyson, that's for sure.
No, for sure. Were there...
Don't shop at Hobby Lobby. They don't want women to have birth control. So,
are there... sorry to take a hard turn from that, but I agree with that sentiment. Are there other books sort of in this, meditation on contemporary life and religion that you would recommend?
That's a tough one. I think this one's really unique. I mean, I know there's books where religion plays a big part, but I don't know that it's so much in questioning faith.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that is a super unique thing about this, is because it looks like the visual style of it is very much like at least the other, Sean Murphy book I can point to, the White Knight book. So it has that. It's not drawn in like an alternative comics fashion, but it's definitely a story that you don't see in mainstream comics. Although it's got all the there's plenty of action sequences and plenty of gunfire.
It's really fast. I think when I first read it, I was shook by the ending because it ends so abruptly.
Really?
It felt like a movie.
I know the ending you're talking about.
And it's just very hard and fast. Like, you're riding this wave of what's going on, and you're going, and then the resolution is just...
I literally did that thing where I flipped back to see...
If you skipped a page?
Yeah. I was like, wait, what happened? There's just this one full page thing where you realize...
Yeah, if it was in a movie, I just imagine, they've got this he's on his motorcycle, the thing that happens, and then you would just, like, it would cue the punk song with, like, a black screen and credits rolling, and that's all you get, and then you're amped up and you have to leave.
Yeah, it's...
That's it.
It's true. Yeah. Were there, like, and of course, like, confessing my ignorance here, I didn't, and you just said this, that I didn't know that he had done Tokyo Ghost, but maybe that's not a good segue to this, but there were times where it, like, really reminded me of, like, manga and, like, the action sequences of manga.
I sold Tokyo Ghost to so many people that weren't really into comics. And I'm like, do you like late 80s, early 90s anime? Because it's totally like Dominion Tank Police. Or whatever, Ghost in the Shell. Like, if you like that stuff, you'll love this.
And Punk Rock Jesus, especially because of the black and white printing of it, like, it just had that feel to me of so many,
his inks are so good. Yeah. I love that. I really hope they're his real fingerprints in the shading. I'm like, don't tell me that's CG'd in there.
Well, there's one, like, I keep looking at that one that's just on Chris's face on the cover.
He uses it on cheeks a lot.
Okay.
And I'm just like, yes, you got your hands dirty. Like, how can you have that control? I would be so mortified to, like, ruin any drawing.
Yeah. I thought it was like a DNA kind of tie-in.
No,
I didn't really think about
it.
But
it shows up in Chrononauts. It shows up in Joe the Barbarian.
Whoa.
Just using his fingers. That's a high-tech technique.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. Is there any other, like, you've obviously done a lot of reading of interviews with Sean Murphy and stuff like that. Is there other trivia about Punk Rock Jesus that we should let readers know before they go into it?
Actually, I only read like 3 interviews right before I came.
Oh, no, that's fine.
Tried to brush up.
I didn't read any, and obviously I didn't even know he was the one doing Tokyo Ghost and Chrononauts.
Read Tokyo Ghost. It's so great. I love it.
Yeah, you've recommended that to me
romantic.
Before, and I think I was always like, I'm not even caught up with Black Science. I can't get into another Remender book.
Yeah,
but
it's so good.
Yeah. And Chrononauts also you've pitched to me. And
super fun. That one also feels like a movie, and I'm not a big Mark Millar fan, but that one, it feels like a fun buddy movie.
Yeah. Yeah, so no other trivia on Punk Rock Jesus that you can think of that we should talk about? I'm trying to think if there's anything we left out. Like,
hopefully we didn't spoil everything.
Right, I don't think so, because I was...
They're in a punk band. There's a whole thing about them being in a punk band. I feel like that takes a backseat to the real headier dilemma of faith and losing faith.
Yeah.
About being a good person.
Yeah, I agree, but I also agree with what you said earlier about being like a 14-year-old and having your world totally change, and everything that punk band does is so much what I can picture, any punk band when I was 14, like, yeah, that's how it's all black and white.
Well,
like
there's that scene with Rebecca where they're touring and she's touring with them, and there's the kid in the wheelchair who wants a blessing. He says that he has faith, but he loves the band. And she kind of, like, Chris wants to just be like, no.
Yeah.
Like, you're dumb. I mean, he doesn't say it that way. It's a little more eloquent.
Yeah, I mean, he slightly argues with the kid.
Right. And then Rebecca's like, be nice. Like, remember to be nice. They're like, don't, just because you don't believe doesn't mean you should be a jerk to those people that do.
Yeah.
I think that's a really important thing to throw in there.
I agree.
It's like 2 panels. It's really important.
And then I feel like the way he comes back to the kid and
takes a
doesn't
picture.
Doesn't give in. Well, he
them.
also says, like, I'll keep you in my thoughts and I'll dedicate my next song to you.
Right.
And I was like, what a great way to say, like, I'm going to show you respect in the way that, that I show respect, but I can't change what I believe to...
He doesn't want to give special treatment to, especially since he doesn't believe that he's who the kid thinks
he's not going to go through
the
motions and sort of like bless this kid if he's not a believer. So yeah. Yeah, I don't think we've spoiled anything. I think this is definitely worth picking up.
Yeah, everybody read it.
On your advice, I guess also pick up Tokyo Ghost and maybe Chrononauts is below there. Would you say recommend any other Sean Murphy books? Like
just all of them.
Okay. All right.
Just read it all. Actually, I wasn't that big of a fan of The Wake. I didn't finish it. It was very slow to come out.
Okay.
So I can't really put my stamp on that one.
Is Tokyo Ghost done? Was it just 2 volumes and it's over?
Yes.
And is Chrononauts done? Or is it ongoing?
It's funny about that because I believe one of the Easter eggs in Chrononauts is a Punk Rock Jesus 2 book on the shelf, I think.
Weird.
It was I'm pretty sure it was Punk Rock Jesus 2 and not Tokyo Ghost 2 because I don't think Tokyo Ghost was out yet. But I hope there's not a sequel.
To Punk Rock Jesus,
I think that should just end.
Yeah.
I also hope that there's never because when Chrononauts came out in trade, it said Volume 1. And I know Mark Millar, but I really hope that there's no Volume 2. Like, I think that should be done.
Oh, gotcha. No, I thought it was an ongoing series because of that.
Yeah, I don't want there to be more. Okay. Like, I hope maybe it's a joke, being like, oh, time travel, right? Like, right. Volume 1. But no, just leave it alone, please.
They should come out with just, like, Volume 12 next.
Yeah, you don't know what's in between.
So what is Comics Bang reading for next month?
Well, next month because
you're not doing July, right?
Right, we don't do July because of Comic-Con, and we don't do December because of Christmas. But for August, we'll be reading an indie comic called My Blacks Don't Match by Drew Rausch. It's available as a webcomic online, and we're trying to get the graphic novels back in store because we keep selling out of it, which is nice. It's kind of a spooky comedy thing.
Cool.
Maybe it's not comedy, but it's very cartoony.
Do you know what day that book club will be?
We meet on the third Saturday of the month at 6:30 from 7:30.
Okay.
From 6:30 to 7:30.
At Comics Unlimited?
Yeah, we meet at Comics Unlimited, but if you're running late, we actually set up in front of the bagel shop down the sidewalk because we don't have chairs.
Good tip. Cool. Thank you so much for joining me, appearing on this slightly awkward outdoor podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, everybody read Punk Rock Jesus by Sean Murphy. And you can find this and all our other podcasts at findusthere.org. Do you want to plug anything? I know you have an Etsy shop and stuff.
Yeah, I have an Etsy. It's Cyanide Sweetheart, and you can follow me on Instagram at Sweetheart Cyanide because I got in there too late to flip it.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you.